Hello, BookTube, and welcome to Last Week in BookTube. This is a regular video series that I've done in the past where I look back at the world in the last roughly a week, including world events, including YouTube in general, and including BookTube, our own beloved little subheading of YouTube, and give you kind of an overview of what I've seen, not in any way meant to be comprehensive, just links that I think you might be interested. Maybe I'll describe them just a little, and we'll go through them. Uh, we'll start with the world in general, which won't have any links. There were three things that really stuck out this time for me in the world. Two of which I mentioned before. One of which is much more recent. One of the two that I've mentioned before is the protests that erupted all over U.S. campuses, college campuses, of students denouncing Israel's actions in Gaza and denouncing the complicity or the silence of their own school administration. Those protests were widespread. They got a little bit dicey, sometimes a little bit violent, and they were propelled into the front of the news by scathing, just acidic anti-Semitism all throughout the protests. That's what made commentators on the far left and the far right sit up and take notice, which was young students screaming the coarsest, most brutal anti-Semitic garbage imaginable. One of the original readings of that, and it was mine, ended up being too optimistic. One of the original readings of that was outside groups that had infiltrated these protests specifically in order to make them like the protest in Charleston. The Jews will not replace us. To make something out of that, to stir the pot and make this more than it was. Outside elements doing that. The more I watch the footage and the more I listen to ad hoc student interviews, the more I think that largely isn't the case. That some of the ugliest screamed anti-Semitism, not just down with the Netanyahu government's treatment of Gaza, but death to Jews. The more I hear, the more I read, the more I hear interviews with students, the more I think that a lot of that was just coming from the students themselves, which makes it even more depressing. I'm making this video on a Sunday. I think it's possible that all of that will erupt again on Monday when classes resume and students are back on campus. I hope that doesn't happen. I hope that this weekend gave everything a chance to cool down, but we will see. The other story that I've mentioned before that was in the news, that was on my mind last week, was a darkly absurd floor show put on by the Trump Court, what used to be the Supreme Court here in the United States, where the justices who make the law in this country decided to hear a case that had been resoundingly dismissed by a lower appellate court. They don't usually do that. Usually if they reach down into the docket of some lower court and pluck up a case, it's because they mean to either reverse it or amplify it. They don't usually do it just to agree with it. And the issue here is a myth. The issue here is a concept that Stephen Miller, the Nazi aide to former President Donald Trump, thought up called presidential immunity, which is, in his telling, a blanket ability for a president to be immune to the law. So if you're president and you decide, that person who's agitating against me, leading all sorts of demonstrations, peaceful demonstrations, speeches in major cities, I think he should be killed. I think I'm going to order the military to execute him. That would be okay. Or if it's illegal, you'd have to be impeached in the Senate first before you could be tried in the courts. In other words, you're above the law. The Supreme Court should not in any way have taken this case. They should not in any way have been discussing it before lawyers speaking on behalf of representative democracy and lawyers speaking on behalf of Donald Trump. They shouldn't have created this floor show in the first place. I've maintained from the beginning that the only reason they took the case was to uphold it. And I believe that's what they will do. But even predicting that, I was not ready for what a gut punch the actual discussions were in front of the Supreme Court. I wasn't ready to hear the dismantling of American democracy so dispassionately debated among the people who are supposed to be the highest justices in the land. So I don't know. What about that? Wouldn't that be bad? I don't know. Let's talk about it a bit. I was stunned, even predicting it. I was stunned. And it's bound to get worse. I mean, the topic is going to get worse because the Trump court is going to grant Donald Trump and only Donald Trump exactly the immunity that he wants, contrary to all law. Then it will be up to every other person in the United States. It will be up to the United States, especially it will be up to law enforcement. Are you going to accept this, or have we reached a point where we're simply going to ignore the Trump court? I don't know. I have no idea. This is totally uncharted territory. And then the third world story is much more recent. I've been refreshing the news compulsively about a series of gigantic tornadoes that touched down in Nebraska, including the outskirts of Omaha, and in Harlan, Iowa. The film footage that is now available is unbelievable. In this age of not only high-definition cell phones that everyone carries with them at all times, but a sense that is highly accentuated by social media that there is no such thing as anything dangerous. Social media has made dopamine-starved click monsters out of almost everybody in the world. So with the result that if you're on TikTok or if you're on Instagram, you will see a feed of a college-age guy walk up to a sign that says positively no swimming alligators, and he'll dive in for the clicks. He'll dive in so that his friend can film it. And the same thing, I've seen countless and hours of footage of these tornadoes filmed from cars and roadway crossings by people who should be in shelter. Where the thing is right on top of them. The thing that people don't understand if they've never experienced a tornado is how fast they can move. It looks like it's proceeding steadily across the horizon, then the wind gusts in one direction at random, suddenly it's headed straight for you at 100 miles an hour. You are not going to find shelter if that happens. Instead, you're going to die. And I lost track of how many film clips I saw on Instagram and elsewhere of someone stopped filming the tornado and saying, "Oh, this is so great," while everyone else in the car is screaming at them to keep driving, to drive away, to drive to safety. We're all in danger. This thing could throw this car 900 miles. To those people, especially if this is the beginning of an active tornado season, to those people and people like that in situations like that, I want to point out that a strong blow with the edge of your hand to the person's throat directly under the hinge of the jaw will render him temporarily unconscious, at which point you drag his body into the back seat, you take the wheel, and drive away from the tornado. No jury anywhere in the country will convict you. That is obvious self-defense. Don't allow yourself to die by pleading with the person who's obviously so dopamine-struck that he can't even see a tornado coming towards him. Instead, incapacitate him and drive away. That'd be my strong urging to you if it happens again. The footage has been amazing. Not only the storms themselves have been amazing to be filmed. I'm trying to ignore the fact that certain dopamine vampires have put up clips on social media with film of actual tornadoes only enhanced by AI. I'm trying to ignore that fact, because that's ghoulish. But also, equally mesmerizing, but far more tragic, is the film of what follows. Whole neighborhoods gone. Streets where everything is flattened. You can see home plans. Square home plans flat with the ground, but nothing else. No furniture, no living room, no nothing that was there before. It's just all gone. That's been stunning. So that was the third thing about the news of the world. Then we can move on to YouTube just in general. So not BookTube, but YouTube just. I watch a huge amount of YouTube just in general. I've got 4 things to recommend to you. One is an old familiar here on Last Week in BookTube, Isaac Arthur. He does a science popularizing channel that is wonderful, and he did one. I released a video just recently on colonizing worlds that are orbiting binary stars, which is going to seem to all of you were raised, in the last 50 years, so you are very familiar with life on a world that has a binary star system, because you all watched while Luke Skywalker looked at the 2 suns of Tatooine setting on the horizon. But it seems like a very familiar concept. But Isaac Arthur goes into detail on what it would be like. And one of the most fascinating things about the video is that in order to do that, he has to describe what binary star systems are like and how different they can be from one from the other. So I'll leave a link. It's wonderful. The next one is Kara and Nate. A lot of you already know this channel. Kara and Nate are a young couple who travel for a living. That's what they do. And whether it's traveling, in a van or on legendary train runs, or in this case, they take you along while they go on one of the poshest business classes of of travel that is even possible. It's just the business class that they travel on in this particular video that I'll link is nicer than your home. It's just amazing to do. They get these things comped for them because they have a huge viewership. So some people are going to see this and want to experience it themselves. And you got to keep in mind, if you're talking about the super luxury 5-room suite private car of an ornate train line, even one person calling that line and saying, I want to book exactly what Kara and Nate just did, more than pays for the comp that you gave them, more than does. So it makes sense as a business model, but they're also very entertaining to watch. The next one is TechWiser, one of my favorite tech channels. Of course, Good e-reader takes the top spot when it comes to that, but second only to them would be TechWiser. They deal in all kinds of tech, and in this latest video, all their videos are wonderful. I think they're fantastic. They also bring back lots of great memories for me. But this video is about the age-old question of MacBook versus Windows, where the most energetic host takes two very late models of those two warring camps and puts them through their paces alongside each other. It's a very hyperkinetic filming style that would ordinarily bother me, but not in TechWiser. I love it there. I think it's earnest. And then finally, Discover Dinosaur, or Dinosaur Discovery, a channel all about dinosaurs. There are a million. This one is about Gigantoraptor, and it's delightful. The visuals, the narrative, it's all. I just love it. If you are a popular science fan, you got to subscribe to Isaac Arthur. You just have to. And if you're a dinosaur fan, or if you have, for instance, a room full of little dinosaur fans, then Dinosaur Discovery should be one of your subscriptions, so that you can just, when a new video comes out, you can just let all the little ones know, gather everybody together, and watch it together. It'd be lots and lots of fun to watch it together. And then we come to BookTube itself. I've got a whole bunch of recommendations here. It's only a fraction of what I watched, but and this isn't meant as favoritism. These are just the ones that stick out for one reason or another. Of course, hovering over all of these things like some sort of ominous dark cloud is CPL Radio, Cedarburg Public Library Radio's Books of the Week, which is a program that I am on. I am their resident critic. So my producer and I go through 20 or so books this time around, new arrivals at the library. We just chat about them. If I know about them, then I will talk about them. If I know about their category, but not that specific book, I'll talk about the category. If I don't know anything about the book at all, I'll just rant about my producer. It's a lot of fun. So that, of course, is hovering over everything. But then I have a list here. Like, for instance, An Active Mind, who has caused a lot of existential trauma for me by being a BroTube channel who wants to be a BookTube channel and who is a genuinely nice guy. That has thrown my whole cosmology off. So it's only fitting that the video I'm recommending is a starter kit that he does on existentialism. That's actually quite good. It'll make it really, where do I start with this whole concept if I want to read it? It'll make that very accessible. Then there's Read Red. Or is it Read? Or is it Red? I don't really know. Does a video about Barthelme's Snow White. Now, this is an author that I don't like. This is a work that I don't like. And that is the wonder of BookTube. Is that I'm watching this smart person passionately go through a work that I don't like by an author that I don't like and maybe move the needle just a bit. I think you'll find it fascinating whether you've read Barthelme or not. Then Grammaticus Books. Of course, my compadre when it comes to video lists, to movie lists that is stirring a hornet's nest every time we do it. He did a video on Robert Heinlein's Starship Troopers that I thought was excellent, just excellent. All about the book and what it says and what it does, and about Heinlein. He's pretty easy to listen to on Heinlein and a couple of other authors. So if you've only seen the movie, the great movie, and maybe you haven't read the book, definitely watch this video. It'll make you want to read the book, that's for sure. Then we have Gregg at Another Bibliophile Reads. He does a response video. A number of people have done video responses to the Atlantic Magazine's ridiculous... The Atlantic Magazine did a list just recently of great American novels, I think, in the last 100 years. Their list was ridiculous, woke nonsense. It was just... It was absurd. It was meant to get exactly what happened. It was meant to get all sorts of quasi-outraged click and engagement, and it did. There's not a bit, not an ounce, not a single scintilla of good faith behind their list. But it did what it was supposed to do. It sparked conversations, and thankfully, thanks to BookTube, a lot of the conversations that it sparked were far more interesting than the list itself. And Gregg and Another Bibliophile Reads is one of those. This will lead you, you'll love his video about this, not only criticizing their list, but suggesting alternatives. And his video will lead you to other videos. You could make a whole afternoon of watching these things, and they'll all be interesting to you. Not only for what you agree with, but for what you don't agree with, right? Then there's David Novak Reads Poetry, who did a great video on slavery in the ancient world and mentioned, bless him, M. Finley. A name that I think, up until his video, I would have thought I was the only person on BookTube who ever mentioned this person. Really, really, in his way, his videos in their way are quietly very instructive. I think you will really enjoy it. Then we have Bartel's Bookshelf, who talked about a book that we've seen on this channel. Recently, Shigeru Kayama's original Godzilla stories were retranslated and reproduced in a gorgeous little paperback. And Bartel's Bookshelf talks about that paperback and about Godzilla and about the works themselves, the text itself. Very interesting to see, especially for those of you who might not have got around to that book, but you'll, of course, know Godzilla. Then we have Heather Gregg. Heather Gregg did the Wildest Dreams tag. I've noticed that the Wildest Dreams tag is bringing out a lot of great responses in people. And hers is probably the best one I've seen so far. I'll leave a link to it. You're going to love it. And if you don't know her channel, well, you can subscribe. Then there's Joseph Reads Books. He talks also about an individual book, Use of Weapons, by Iain Banks. Iain M. Banks is not the easiest author to get into. And Joseph Reads Books does a great job. He does a great job talking about this book. But he will make the whole Commonwealth series feel far more accessible than it might without watching this video. If you've never thought about reading these books, you will definitely be thinking about it by the time you're done with this video. Then Anne Novella did a video, just a overview discussion of Patricia Highsmith. That was wonderful. Opinionated, as usual, but also wonderful, thought-provoking, deep, textured. Just the kind of thing I love to see on BookTube. I never know when any of these things are coming. All these videos are different from each other, even the reviews. And I never know what to expect. I never know what I'm going to get with my subscription feed. That's why I'm constantly adding to my subscription feed, because I love the variety of all these conversations about books. Then we have, into every variety, a little Jack Edwards Must Fall. Of course, I'm going to mention Jack Edwards, the Demon Smurf, my arch nemesis on BookTube. Jack Edwards has 80 million followers or whatnot. He is the cautionary tale that I made 10 years ago come to life. I said 8-9 years ago, these Smurfs that bounce around and emote and whatnot about books, do we really want to be giving them millions and millions of subscribers? Do we want them quoted in the London Times? Do we want them running awards? And Jack Edwards does that now. He's a routine presence that is only going to grow greater. At award ceremonies, red carpets, coming up soon, I guarantee you, literary judging panels. Of course, book contracts, any publisher that he approaches is going to say yes. And he has a backup channel. He has a second channel, Jack in the Books. And his style of doing BookTube, obviously it has a legion of devoted fans. You just have to look at the comments section of any one of his videos to see that. And I no longer begrudge him those fans. He makes reading fun. For a lot of people who might not stick with it otherwise, he serves, in other words, an incredibly important function, and he does it really well. The icy reserve that I had towards him sort of chipped away when he made a video about building his own personal library. Not the books, but the actual room, the actual physical space. And I watched that video. I watched it a couple of times. There was enthusiasm in that video that could not possibly have been faked for clicks. It was genuine. And that chipped away at my icy rhesus monkey transplant heart just a bit. And recently, on his second channel, Jack in the Books, Jack Edwards did a video that was intentionally facile. He knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing. He saw a picture of the Princess of Wales at her writing desk. And the books on the desk were the Penguin cloth-bound classics. And he wanted to examine those books to figure out, what they say, how many of them have you read, what do they say about the princess? Of course, he knows perfectly well they don't say anything about her. She doesn't write at all. She has terrified underlings to do that. It was a photo op. And the books were chosen because of what they look like. If you put all those Penguin hardcovers together, they look quite nice. On this channel, we have been over many times that they don't hold up. When you actually read them, taking them on and off the shelf, especially putting them in and out of your bag, all that pretty filigree wears right off. And it takes no time at all for it to wear off. So that you have not the prettiest books in the world, but just completely empty books. Ugly, raw, undecorated books. Or ugly patches. The whole point is that what they look like if you don't ever touch them. And she, of course, doesn't touch them. She, of course, doesn't read. And he knows that. Once I get past that, then I can go at his videos for the sheer fun of it, for the whimsicality of it, for the fact that he's making this into a fun game. And it is working. The thing to remember about Jack Edwards, I hate to say it, but it's true, is that he's a force for good. I don't want him to judge the Booker Prize, but he's a force for good. Because a lot of the people that are in his comments field, a lot of the people that never miss a video that he makes, they are enchanted with reading, in large part due to the fun of that he makes it and other channels like him make it. That's important. I don't think there's a whole lot of fun about me, so I've been a foremost advocate of reading for longer than Jack Edwards' parents have been alive. But I recognize how effective he is at it, and this video is fun. In a way, so believe it or not, I'll leave a link to it. And then finally we get to the last one. The last thing I'll do for BookTube, the last thing I'll do for this video, a little bit confusing to me. I think that it might ultimately be a commercial for something else. You'll have to go and watch it yourself to see. It's Right Conscious. It's the name of the channel. And he did a video on the intersection of David Foster Wallace, who he loves to distraction. David Foster Wallace is I think it's safe to say it's his favorite author. And he's done a huge amount of work, a huge amount of videos about David Foster Wallace. Now, I don't need to like the writing of David Foster Wallace to appreciate that. I love that about BookTube. That I can go to some channel and say, oh, right, so-and-so is one of your favorite authors. I don't like so-and-so at all. But I love listening to you talk about it. You are finding whole worlds of wonder in this author that I think very little of. And in this video, Right Conscious does a video in the intersection of David Foster Wallace, his boy, David Foster Wallace, and Dostoevsky, whose life he also appears to know quite well. I don't know how well he knows the works, but he definitely knows what he's talking about. And it's interesting to listen. He's very interesting and personable to listen to. The thing that confused me about the video is that he doesn't ever talk about the subject. David Foster Wallace did write a little about Dostoevsky. He barely mentions it. And there are some resonances in the writings of Dostoevsky, especially the more maudlin autobiographical stuff, that very much echoes. They're very, not echoes because it sounds first, but very much parallel stuff in David Foster Wallace, who also had a huge penchant for maudlin self-pity. And that's not addressed either. But what is addressed over and over again in the video is Right Conscious's Substack, where I guess he examines these things in greater depth. You'll have to watch it for yourself and see, and of course I'd be curious to know when you see a video like that. I mean, here's an engaging young guy talking about a potentially interesting subject. When you see a thing like that and you think, okay, the implication that I'm being given here is that maybe this is gone into in greater depth elsewhere. Do you go elsewhere? I mean, is that enough to make you go and say, all right, well, I'll go and explore this guy's Substack? I'm curious to know. It actually almost had that effect on me. I don't know if that was him or if that was that I am, let's just say, interested in Substack. But it's fascinating anyway, and it might be an interesting channel for you if, for instance, you like David Foster Wallace more than I do. You could scarcely like him less than I do, so you must like him more. And maybe if you do, you don't know about this channel. So, and that, I hope, will apply to all of these recommendations, is that you might find something that you like. I'm going to stop here. 25 minutes is enough for talking about just the highlights of BookTube. I could go on for a long time. I watch a lot of YouTube and BookTube every week. But instead, I will just start the clock on assembling the malefactors for next week. So I'll wrap this up for now. I'll leave all the links down below, and I'll see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.